Hello, I'm Brian Foster. Today I'm talking about Spiritism, and in fact, we're talking about questions and answers about Spiritism as we do on Mondays. And so please feel free to enter your questions in the comment section and I'll answer them. Before we begin, let us have a short prayer. Dear Christ, please bless us all and give us health and give us the path to be calm and charitable, fraternal and helpful and honest to our fellow humans here on earth, so we may experience good health and be able to ascend in the spiritual hierarchy, so we may be able to go through that narrow door of heaven by remodeling ourselves, by analyzing ourselves, and doing well. Please help us on this journey. Amen. So, also, before I begin, I have here, and those who are on the podcast can't see, but I have the main books by Alan Kardec, and I have my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. So if you're interested about Spiritism, go to my site, nwspiritism.com, and download free PDF, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. Of course, it's also in Kindle, paperback, and in Audible format. Now, for Alan Kardec's books, I think the three main is like five major books, but the three main is the Spirits book, the Mediums book, for anyone's interested in spirit communication, learning about spirit communication, learning about spirits in general. That is a must read. And then, of course, the Gospel According to Spiritism, which to me was very helpful in interpreting the New Testament. So again, you can download all those for free on PDF. Just type in Alan Kardec space PDF, and there's plenty of sites that have those downloadable for free. Now, also on my site, nwspiritism.com, you can just click on his picture on the right-hand side, and it will take you to a bookstore where you can get the Spirits book and other Spiritist books from the FEB bookstore. Of course, you can also get them from Amazon, but I actually think they're less expensive from this bookstore. Although if you have Prime, you can get them shipped for free on Amazon. So it may make the price about the same. Okay, let us go through the first question I have written down from previous times. Again, so if you have questions, write them in the comment section, or if you're watching this afterwards, put them in the comment section. I always get notified when there's comments. I take those questions and I put them in a folder here, and I go over them. So one of the questions I had last time, and I couldn't answer it correctly because I wanted to do some research, was force centers associated with diseases. And I thought I could come back and give a pretty good, kind of overview. But when I looked into it, it's something, I'm just going to give a summary of the crown centers and an example of one, because it's hard to dip your toe into this. In fact, if you really want to know all the force centers associated with diseases, I would recommend that you look at the book Evolution in Two Worlds. Again, that's Evolution in Two Worlds. It is a wonderful book giving you real detail. So it's not like your typical Spiritist literature, especially it's not like your typical book in the Andre Louis series. This gets down into the nitty-gritty of spirit evolution versus human evolution. So this does get down into great detail. So I would recommend, if you're very interested in this, is to read Evolution in Two Worlds by Chico Xavier. You can look him up by Francisco C. Xavier. Chico is his nickname. Everyone called him Chico Xavier. And Waldo Vieira. Now let's get to what the summary is, so we can go over this. So the different force centers are the crown center, which is, and of course this corresponds a lot. In typical with the chakra centers that we have. Oh, wait a second. There we go. Lost that for a second. I have a question. I will get to that question as soon as I'm done with the one I've just started. It's a great question. So the crown center, and hopefully you can see this, it commands all other centers, the stimuli of the spirit, assimilates and distributes solar energies and electromagnetic resources. considering an exposition of the phenomena of the physical body and satisfying the imperatives of simplicity in our definitions, we can say that the energies of nourishment for the nervous system and its subdivisions emanate from the center, providing all the electromagnetic resources that are indispensable for organic stability. So if you want to think about things that can throw us off and make us sick, and this is the crown center, if it's affected, this is like all the the energies of nourishment for the nervous system. So that there's nervous disorders, etc. The cerebral center controls senses, sight, hearing, touch, psychic abilities, which is a cerebral center contiguous to the crown center, which orders the various types of perception, with which in the physical body comprises sight, hearing, touch, and the vast network of the process of the mind that have to do with speech, learning, art, and knowledge. It is in the cerebral center that we possess the command of the endocrine center, which has to do with psychic power. So again, in the cerebral center, if we disturb that, we could have, problems with our mind, maybe tumors in the brain, all sorts of things that if we unbalance ourselves, those can happen. The throat center, which controls speech. There is the throat center, which presides over the vocal phenomena, including the activities of the thymus, the thyroid, and the parathyroid, where you can see then if we hurt that, a lot of thyroid problems. Then there is the heart center, which sustains the services of the emotions and overall equilibrium. And of course, the heart center controls emotions. The splenic center, which controls the distribution of nourishment for your body. There is the splenic center, which in the dense body is seated in the spleen and regulates the distribution and circulation adequate for the vital resources in every corner of the body. So again, it has to do with circulation. It distributes the nourishment. And so that's very important too. 6, the gastric center, the entry point of fluids, food and fluids. Then comes the gastric center, which controls the entrance of nourishment and fluids into the body. So that's digestion, so on and so forth. The genetic center, which controls the sex drive and allows stimulus to your body, housing the sanctuary of sex as a molding temple of forms and stimuli. So here's an example of what happens with a disturbance in one center. Now and I'll fill in some of the, so Julio, what he did in a previous life, he poisoned himself. So this is what excerpt I took from the book is in Julio's case, he's the author of the disturbance in the throat center, an alteration expressed by an infirmity or imbalance that would by necessity go with him into reincarnation. So then Henri Louis said, well, how will he cleanse the deficiency? And so the answer was, Julio will have to live with pain in his throat, thus healing himself by correcting the vibratory tonus of the throat center and reestablishing it to normality. So this is where what happens during a physical life. He poisoned himself. Must have been something very caustic, right? It didn't go down to the digestive center, went in the throat center. And so now he has to cleanse himself. He has to repair that part of his paraspiritual body. And then what he says is, Julio will be reborn in this physiological defective body, which will somehow portray the injured area, his throat. He will suffer intensely from the vocal organ, which will undoubtedly be characterized by weak resistance to microbial attacks. In virtue of our friend having scorned the blessing of a physical body, he will be faced with dreadful struggles in order to learn how to appreciate it instead. Then he asks, well, what are the main causes of our diseases? So what are the causes of our diseases? Now, in our medical world, it's viruses, bacteria, environmental factors. Now, in Spiritism tells us, pride, vanity, tyranny, selfishness, laziness, and cruelty are vices of the mind that generate disturbances and diseases in its instrument of expression. Now, and that's broad. And now that's not saying that there's not microbial diseases, colds, flus. Spiritism says, yeah, I mean, it's not everything has done that, but we're talking about major, things like cancer, heart disease. Those were either pre-planned, and a lot of that is pre-planned, I know of one person that was was in the reincarnation center and planning out their body, and Henri Louise was there, and the guy that was helping him plan the body said, "Now you see this spot in the stomach? I forgot exactly where it was." He goes, "He's going to have a horrible ulcer there that's going to give him a lot of pain." And he says that spot where he gets a lot of pain is exactly the spot where he stabbed another person in his previous life. So these things, everything has, uh, an action and reaction. Okay, so let me start answering questions. So I wanted to go over that for people to for last of our last live stream. Okay, so let's go over the questions now. Okay, here's the first question. Who created us all and the universe? In Spiritism, how would you describe your higher self and also God? So God created the spirit universe. Now, and therefore, God is outside and part of. Now, have we been told by spirits in heaven that even they do not understand God? So when you die and go to heaven, it's not like, oh, I understand God. No, you don't. God is so high that we don't have the comprehension. What the spirits have told us is that to begin to understand God, start understanding Jesus Christ, because he is a pure spirit. So he's starting to, he has godlike powers to us. He has godlike powers. So who created us all? So that was God. But who created the earth? Who guided the earth? Who guided earth through billions of years and guided the evolution of species, plants, animals, humans? That was Jesus Christ, with all of his ministers in charge of different functions, flora and fauna of the earth, that they would deliberately modify the DNA and evolutionary changes for the earth, and in order to create the species. And they're still doing that, right? That's still going on. Humans, we're not going to be the same in I don't know how many thousands of years now. We too will change over time. So again, this is a continuous process. This is not a process where God created all the animals and he did it in a week, in 7 days. No, this is the scientific dating of the Earth is probably not far off, and it was evolutionary steps, but it was guided evolution. And these spirits can actually modify DNA, the genetics of different species and plants and humans, in order to go for the target that they have planned. Now, why they plan these targets, I'm not sure. So in Spiritism, how would you describe yourself and also God? So there's actually a great description of God by Allan Kardec. I think it's one of the first chapters of the Spirits book. So I would have you go there, and of course you can download on MP3 format and also in an Audible format the Spirits book. Of course, you can also get it in PDF, and you can get it in on my YouTube video. There's a playlist called the Spirits book, and I would listen to that, and it goes into greater detail of God. God is unique, is perfect, all-knowing. He can't. There's no one approaching God. There's no co-God. There's no one higher than God. And but there's really things that we can't know very well. And our higher self. So if you look at, let me give you a picture here. Let me find it. There we go. Let's put this in here. So what are we? We are composed of three components right now while we're on physical Earth. We are composed of a spirit, a paraspirit, and a body. Now, our paraspirit is a manifestation of our body, of how we look. And that paraspirit covers and it is attached to every cell in our physical body. And when we die, we look like how we think we should look like, which is the paraspirit. That's why people, when they pass over, it's like, oh, I'm not dead. I'm still here. I can feel myself. right? That's because their perispirit is kept the duplication of their body. Now, over time, as you know, thought is action in the spirit world. You can look younger or older. You can have hair like I don't have hair, right? Uh, and so on and so forth. So your higher self is really your encapsulation of your personality and your character, which is the spirit. Your spirit is immortal. It can never die. You never are unhealthy. You and your spirit grows in intelligence and emotional quotient over time. You know, when people think we're like, and when I describe that we are this encapsulation of logic components, I don't want people thinking that, you know, we're this AI robot incapable of emotions or uniqueness or spontaneity. This artificial intelligence, this creation by God of spirits with free will, is so far beyond anything that we can think of as artificial that, you know, this is who we are, right? We have emotions, we have hate and envy. We're trying to get rid of all those things. We have spontaneity, we have creativity, and this is all done by the grace of how the spirit world has created spirits. So our higher self, and it can go higher, right? So we are spirits. We start out as immature spirits, kind of where we are now. We can become more connected with the universal database, where you can, because you can look at the spirit world as these wonderful levels of you know, different levels of heaven and areas, and just you know, majestic scenery and environments and higher spirits. And that's how our senses interpret the data that is there. Or you can look at it as like in the matrix, where we're surrounded by data, and the routines within our spirit interpret that data immediately, so we see mountains and scenery as other spirits have created them. But then you can roam around here, you can connect other data, you can connect, let's say if you want to know what's going to happen to, if you're high enough, you're going to happen to your Uncle Jim. You can go look at Uncle Jim to see what the plan is for his life and say, oh, 2 months from now his car's going to run out of gas, he's going to have to change a tire. I mean, those are things that you can inquiry depending on your level. In fact, I knew a medium, and you know, even Alan Kardec talked about different types of mediums, what they did. But the one type he didn't talk about medium is a medium that could kind of connect to this database. And this medium, like, no, okay, he was like, well, he's wrong a lot of times. And when I talked to him, yes, he was wrong a lot of times, because it's got to be very hard, because he'll just go off and go from one connection to another connection. It's like pointers in a database. I don't want to get too specific, but usually in databases, let's say your credit card data and all your purchases, you've got your credit card information that points to every purchase you make, right? And that purchase may point to something other, like you're paying it off over time. Well, the same thing happens in the universal database. Is, you know, you've got that person, and then it points to their future, their past, their present, other information, and he follows that stuff. In fact, talking to him, I found out where he said something. I thought, oh, I think he's misinterpreting that. And of course, did it happen, but in a way that I kind of figured out. The way he described it wasn't the way he understood it, but it was enough clues for me to figure out that, yes, he probably saw that nugget of information and didn't know how to place it in context. So it's very, very interesting. Okay. Next question. What happens spiritually when a person disassociates from their body in reality after some type of trauma? Now, and that can happen if you have a really bad trauma and you're stuck into this memory loop or something like that. And hopefully other spirits will help you get over that. But you can be locked in and get into this psychological kind of, you know, being this cocoon and the psychological process of not feeling like you're part of your body. Now, hopefully you'll be helped to re-encounter that, because you always are part of your body until you die, because your perispirit is connected to every cell in your body. But your mind is disassociating itself because you become obsessed with some sort of trauma that's happened, and it goes over and over again, and that can be very debilitating um, for people, and hopefully you can be helped. So that is uh, not a good thing to happen spiritually. Hopefully you'll get help to reconnect, because you're here on earth to learn and to grow and to experiences the blueprint and the plan that was given to you. Next question. Is ghost hunting bad? No, no, it's not bad. It's There's nothing wrong on that at all. Um, and you're welcome to find that, to understand where ghosts are, and I think it's fascinating. There are all sorts of, I think, to really understand ghosts, which are spirits in different forms of manifestation, one should read the medium's book, because you'll find out that spirits are like humans on earth. There's all sorts of levels of spirits, and there's all sorts of levels of humans on earth. And when someone dies, it doesn't mean they turn into an angel, plays the harp, and is all knowing. They can be, when a criminal dies, they're still a criminal. When a good person, charitable person, nice person dies, they're still a good, charitable, nice person. They still have the knowledge that they had. They don't all of a sudden accumulate all this knowledge. It may take time for them to remember their past lives and so forth. So a lot of times ghosts are manifestations of things that happened in the past, or there's like ghosts and noises in the house, where this ghost is attached to that house, because that's not a high spirit, that's a lower spirit that's attached to that house for some reason, because they're materialistic. That I can tell you one story where this spirit died. He became a miser. He just did not want to leave his house. That was one of his possessions, and that's mine. And there's stories from Chico Xavier where there's a spirit that's attached to a certain picture that's in the museum, and that spirit followed that picture from museum to museum. Wherever it goes, it's connected to that picture. Now, hopefully, those spirits will be helped to get rid of that. So no, it's not bad at all. Here it is. And then the next question. What part of me, or my spirit, is where my emotions, morals, conscience, and personality lives? They live in both places. They live in your spirit, or there's everything. In your spirit, there's everything there. And then you got your perispirit. Think of it like a garden hose going to your physical brain. And your physical brain isn't as good as your spirit. So you have to filter everything through this physical brain, which isn't as smart or quick or healthy as your spirit brain. But your personality and your morals, your conscience, lives in your physical brain for that time being. It's also in your spirit brain, and it communicates back and forth all the time. Your spirit brain is always updated in whatever happens to you. It's just in two places. So don't fear. If all of a sudden, it's like there is, if someone is going to be guillotined, right, where their head's chopped off, they're not going to lose anything. The poor guy's or woman's head's going to be shut off, but their spirit brain's still's got everything. They're not anything. Or if someone has a head injury and turns into a poor debilitated person, their mind is still completely safe in the spirit world. So you cannot be destroyed that way. But right now, your emotions are placed in your physical body, because that's where the spirit world wants you to modify them, and then set those modifications up to your spirit brain. And of course, your conscience is always there, and your instinct. So you should consider that everything that really lives in your physical brain, it's updated and constantly backed up to your spirit brain. And your spirit brain may be more aware of certain things, and you can have conversations in your dreams, but you don't remember them very well because you can't decipher them by your physical brain. But your main focus right now as a physical person should be on your physical brain. Is reality shifting real? How does it actually work? Or what actually happens to my spirit? Do we actually have multiple selves in different realities right now? So a lot of people say that we live all our lives at the same time, and that there's all alternate realities, alter Earths, alternative universes, all happening at the same time. And I can see why people say that, but because there's no time. But what if you that happened, then how can you grow? Because the spirit world is you know by things how they change state or events occur. Because time, really, when you think time just means decay. There's no reason we have to have time. If we had no time on Earth, we could things would still happen. You'd still go to school. You'd still drive to work per se, but you wouldn't know if you're late or not because there's no time. But I'm just teasing. But you would not grow old. Things would stay the way they were. If you planted a tree, that tree would stay however you thought it should be, right? Because the spirit world thought is action. So if everything happened at once, how could you learn, right? So that's why you incarnate life after life after life, because if you incarnated all your lives at the same time, how do you learn? How do you get better? How do you grow as a person? So I think the answer is no. Now, do I know that for sure? No, I'm not going to say that I know that for sure. And I can certainly understand why people think that there are different realities. Now, the spirit world universe is so complex that, like, when people have NDEs, let me give you this. And someone says, well, I don't know if I want to go back. Like, okay, they'll say, look, we'll show you what happens if you don't go back. And this one person had an NDE, and it showed that his family was devastated. His mother and father got divorced. His sister had a horrible life. And it showed him all these scenes like they were real. And it showed him the alternative. If you go back, your mom, dad will be fine. Your sister will graduate, right? All this stuff. So how can they do that? I mean, this is the complexity. So it's like running these Monte Carlo simulations of different possibilities and events in a microsecond, and then creating this visual representation of what could happen, what depending on the choice that you make. And so that's why I think some people think we have different realities, because they probably have seen where things can branch off, and there's probably constantly analysis and evaluations of what different branches can do, because we're being guided by spirits at this moment, the Earth, right? So what happens if someone launched the missile somewhere? Okay, well, that would take the whole Earth and everyone else to a different path. So I think that could be it, but I'm not sure. So I do not believe we actually have multiple selves in different realities right now. We have our one self in reality that we are going through, but we have the possibilities constantly of different realities depending upon our choices, which are always looked at and analyzed and thought about by higher spirits. So the complexity of the spirit world is beyond our comprehension. I'm trying my best to explain my poor view of it, but it's just amazing. Okay, next question. Why do we have telepathic abilities? Well, in the future, we'll have more. In fact, the human brain was made to have a lot more and have everybody to have telepathic abilities. And in this, it's because they want us to be more and more physical, but then more and more as the planet rises to regeneration, to a happy planet, to a divine world. They want us to be more and more have the less density and the abilities of a spirit. Spirits don't have to voice communicate. They go mind to mind. So the reason we have telepathic abilities is that's what we will have in the spirit world, and that's what our future will be. As we go to higher and higher planets, we won't need speech. And then the way the spirits speak is they speak mind to mind. They'll send thoughts, but then they'll also send pictures. In fact, they'll use these two means of communication to ensure 100% understanding. So they'll send a thought like, meet me on the corner of 5th and Main, and then they'll send you a picture of the exact corner they want you to meet at 5th and Main. So you have both. And what's interesting is in John, the book of Revelation, when he talks about this, like he said, God or Jesus, I can't remember who he said, would have lightning come out of his mouth, I think, or light swords. I forgot what he said. And what the spirits say is that when you send a thought, it's like a little piece of light coming out of your mouth. So he actually was in heaven seeing spirits communicate by thought and by sending pictures. And so, I mean, that was fantastic when I read that. It's so interesting. So that's why we have telepathic abilities, because we actually had it, and some people have it now, of course, but we have it in the spirit world, and we'll have it in later incarnations as we ascend. Next question. What is heaven, and what does heaven consist of? Is everyone's heavens different? Can we have whatever we want in heaven? So a lot of people say that we create our own heavens. And what I believe, I can understand their point of view, because thought is action, and we have that capability, but it doesn't happen that way because we're not high spirits yet. When you go to heaven, the law of affinity puts you with other people like you. And in that, and we're all interconnected. And so we all have thoughts come through us. So we go to a part of heaven where there's a beautiful river or trees and a city and other people in that city. We are affected by their thoughts going through, and we just naturally conform to their thoughts. So we see the same buildings, the trees, and the people. Now, we have the capability, as you go higher and higher, you most probably have the capability of saying, okay, no, I want to be in my own little world. I don't want anybody around me. I'm going to create my own little, let's say basement, right? Where there's no one there, and I'll start creating more and more of that stuff. That's possible, but you have to learn how to manipulate universal fluid, manipulate all these things, and have a stronger force of will, because these superior spirits will implement these environments in these lower levels of heaven and the lower zone and in the dark abyss, right? Which is like a purgatory, with their thoughts are making these things work. They'll set up the environment, but then they'll let all these lower spirits make the environment even worse, conforming to their thoughts. And that's, again, the law of affinity. So when you go to heaven, you'll be placed with people like you, and you'll see this area that's beautiful, and you will conform to what they want to conform. Because, think of this question. If everyone created their own heaven when they passed away, how much did they think about this? Did they think what they wanted the temperature to be? Did they want to see their family in heaven? How are they going to talk to their family? Are there roads? Are there houses? Or is there sun? Is there food? I mean, it's a million details. Do we think about that? Do we build our own heaven before we die? Because how are you going to just sit there and go, oh, where am I? What am I going to do? I'm on this, like you're in the middle of this fog bank, and you have nothing because you haven't thought about it before. No, that doesn't happen. And the spirit world will abandon us like that into this, unless you've been a lower spirit, that happens. But no, so that's, think of it logically, of how it would work when you've got this power and yet you don't know what to do with it. So the other question is, everyone's heaven's different. So you go to where the law of affinity, and there's lots of different places in heaven and in purgatory and there's different ways to get into heaven. There's so many different unique, and you can expand unlimitedly. So I would say there are groups of commonalities amongst, let's say you live in the city of Rio, and when you pass over, if you're in the Rio de Janeiro, you go to No Solar, where you meet people like you if you're going to heaven in that spot. If you are in Los Angeles, there may be a heavenly city above Los Angeles. And therefore you'll be with people kind of like you, that talk like you. This is the lower levels. In the higher levels, there's different areas. In fact, one spirit says there's centers for different religious groups, right, where you go to other religious people like you. There's centers for people back in the old days of imperialists, right? Colonizers, all sorts of different groups of people that want to be together and talk to each other. So those are so there's a lot of differences. There's a who knows the variety. I wouldn't say it's infinite, but it's quite a lot. So it's be careful what you wish for, because you might go there in heaven. Now, most times when people who have been good and go to heaven, they will go to an area, like a convalescent place. They will be uh, gradually introduced that, hey, you could be dead, right? So a lot of people don't even know they're dead. I've seen that in mediums meetings. And they're gradually introduced the fact that they went over and came to heaven, and they will be getting used to the fact that they look younger, they're immortal, and then they will start being trained. In the first levels of heaven, you'll learn how to volatilate, which is move by the speed of thought. You'll learn how to absorb. You won't have to eat food. You absorb sunlight, maybe drink some broth or soup or water, I should say. And you'll learn about heaven. You'll learn about the processes and the way the universe works. You'll learn about human nature. You learn about yourself and the history, and how the human race is being guided. There's a lot to learn, and that's what heaven wants: are intellectually uh, uh, curious people who will pursue that. So the way to ascend in heaven is to be intellectually curious and to be humble and rise not only intellectually with knowledge, but also modifying your own behavior, becoming more loving, fraternal, and charitable. Okay, next question. I'd be interested in hearing more about telepathy. It is if it's discussed in the spirits book. Thanks. Yes, it is, and I can't remember where, but it's discussed all throughout um, many books that I've read. Books by Sacrifice by Devaldo Franco, Chico Xavier, and so let me give you a little bit of thought. So first of all, spirits can communicate by thoughts once you get to a certain level, but also, and maybe that's just maturity too, because also even lower spirits here on Earth. Let's say we're all right now on the crust of the Earth. Spirits around us can read our thoughts, and subconsciously, our brain processes thoughts that move through us. We may not hear that person's thoughts, but they affect us. Right now, we don't have the ability. Some people do. I don't want to say that, but right now, most of us don't have the ability. But we could feel pulls of emotions or inspirations that come to us. That is a form of telepathy, right? We'll get inspirations from good spirits and indifferent spirits and spirits who mean us harm. And that's why I discuss over and over again the importance of following your conscience. That's why we're on Earth. We're on Earth to ascend, to become a better person. As part of that ascension, we have to learn to filter out stupid ideas. Think of yourself as you're in middle school or junior high, where all your friends gave you the dumbest ideas possible. And if you were not too bright, you say, "Oh, that's a great idea." If you were bright, you say, "I don't think so." Right? We've all been through that. I don't know about girls, but I know boys have. Um, and so it's the same on Earth, right? You're being bombarded with probably pretty stupid ideas, but that's why we're supposed to follow our conscience, and our instincts. Our conscience and our instincts are given to us by God, even in our physical body, so we can use that to filter out these flow of information coming to us. And so now, for spirits here on Earth, let's say, now spirits who aren't ready for that will communicate by voice, right? But you have a spirit that speaks Spanish versus a spirit that speaks English. They won't understand each other. Now, what they have been told, what I've read, is that your paraspirit will remember all the languages you've ever had in your past life. So if you're a spirit and you've had a past life in one of the Spanish speaking countries, but you only speak English right now, and let's say you pass over or whatever, someone speaks to you in Spanish, you will understand what they're saying because your paraspirit will automatically translate that for you. Isn't that interesting? So, I mean, the complexity of what we get. So um, that is the case there. Uh, so telepathy, and again, as I said, there's thoughts, and now the other thing I want to say is on the physical universe, the speed limit is the speed of light. There is no speed limit in the universe. It's this. It's however you think. So if you have a spirit, let's say on Saturn, and you're here on Earth, and they think, it's instantaneously. They'll send a thought to you. Like your guardian angel could be anywhere in the universe, and your guardian angel will know what's happening with you because they will query that universal database. They'll say, okay, oh, okay, this guy, yeah, he's fine for next week. I can be from afar, but 13 days from now, he's going to go through some dramatic episodes. I better be near him so I can talk to other spirits and we can help this person go through this difficult trial. So they can help you and give you inspiration and try to guide you even from, what we think are billions and, thousands of light years away. Okay. Do pets go to heaven and do they have souls like ours? And the answer is absolutely yes. They go to heaven. And in fact, Chico Xavier one time was the great medium. He's one that wrote this book, the whole series of Andre Luis books. Read his books; they're wonderful. Xavier, Francisco C. Xavier. He was sitting next to a woman. She had this lap dog on her lap, and he says, "You know how long you've had that dog?" She goes, "Oh, a couple of years." He goes, No. You've had that dog for 500 years. That dog has come back to you in life after life. So not only pets go to heaven, but they become associated with us. If you have a favorite pet, that pet could come back, and I'm not sure if it could come back maybe multiple times in one of your physical lives because they don't live as long, right? A dog, 15, 20 years. So they go to heaven and they come back. Now, pets live mostly by instinct, and they have they have intelligence. Now they're not given the gift of total free will. That's only given to the human species. But there's always gray area, right? There's no black and white. There's, as you go higher and higher in the evolution of animals towards the human, is you can exercise more of your free will within certain parameters, because that's part of becoming and being able to be designated and starting out as a primitive human. Now, what am I trying to say? Let me try to make it simple because I'm rambling. A spirit is created. Now, how a spirit is exactly created, I don't know, but a spirit will be created as this logical, encapsulated personality. And that spirit may just say, okay, your job is to be that amoeba or bacteria. And then as you go on and on with more and more complex organisms, you start learning how to fashion your paraspirit to handle more force centers, right? Think of a self-learning, logical piece of programming that as they learn new things, they become more and more capable. So your pet started out the same way as we started out, very primitive. They're just at a different period of their lives and their spiritual journey. Someday they may be human. Someday they may be superior to us as far as in the superior hierarchy if they go up really high. So pets have souls like us. They are the same. And the other thing I'd like to say is all spirits are created equal. Meaning, unlike so the United States Constitution says, all people are created equal. Well, we know that's not true. We really mean is you're equal under justice and under laws. I cannot be a basketball player or a football player or anything that entails coordination. I can't be a rocket scientist. I'm not smart enough. But a spirit is created equal. So if you want to be as smart as Einstein and that's your goal, then you pursue that in the spirit world. You reincarnate over and over again and you become as that. If you want to be a great musician or author or painter, then you say, no, that's my goal. I want to keep training on that, so on and so forth. You can do that. I hope that answers that question. Okay, what is the meaning of dreams? So, and I have videos on that you might want to look at, and you might want to even look at some of my books. So, dreams. So when you sleep, you leave your body, your spirit, your paraspirit leaves your body, but still connected by that little cord, that silvery cord that was talked about even in the New Testament. You leave that body and you go into the spirit world. So you never really sleep. You sleep because your physical body needs it, and because they want to keep you involved in the spirit world, and they want to come back and talk to you and so forth. So when you sleep and you see these like nonsense dreams or these fuzziness, so remember, you are in this physical world with, these 4 dimensions, and then you go to the spirit world, which is entirely different. There is no time. There's a different number of dimensions, and your poor innocent physical brain can't really interpret that, and therefore it's fuzzy. Sometimes it's nonsense, but sometimes you can't. Like sometimes you remember a number or you remember a face. And what I tell people is, and it depends where you go too. Now, if you go to a place where like you feel like you're trapped or you're hunted, and you go, oh God, that was horrible. You probably went to the lower zone or below that. You went to not a nice place. If you went somewhere and you kind of feel good and refreshed after you slept, you probably went in a higher level. Now, many dreams you're not allowed to remember, but they'll come out. They'll come out later. I give myself as an example. I went through a couple of years ago. It was like 2 months of. I had the most boring dreams ever. I would be on like this college campus. I would walk through the plaza. I'd go to different classes, and I'd sit there and I go, "What? I have no idea what they're talking about. Oh, don't ask me anything, right?" And I was told by a medium that, well, you were in some level of heaven, and you were being told and given direction. Now, do I remember what that is? No, but it comes out somehow. It comes out in like an intuition, or they trigger a memory with inspiration from you, and then you go, oh, okay, yeah, I want to, or like emotions triggered. So many things you won't know. Now, some dreams you can actually see the future. There was this whole part in one of the books by Jiva Owen, which I talk about in my book, How We're Guided by Spirits. I'll bring this book up, where this man was saying, okay, how can people see the future? So what he was done, he was taken in his dreams, he was taken to this place and shown what was going to happen to his town in the future, so he could learn. They're not going to tell him how this happens, but they give him little clues, right? Because he was thinking so much, it's like a prayer. Then he came back and he didn't remember his dream very well. And then he was walking through the town. He saw this notice that this nobleman was going to come to town. And he goes, oh, I recognize that face. And then he remembered he saw the future in his dreams. And that's why I tell people, when you have dreams, write them down. Now, they could be nonsense, but what I've seen in my life, and I hear other people say, is you write them down, even if they're a little bit nonsensical, but then reread them every quarter, every month, whatever. That's what I do. And then sometimes they'll go, oh, that's what that meant. Like I had a dream where I was writing my book, The 7 Tenets of Spiritism. I wasn't finished yet. And I had a dream that this cousin of my wife showed me this 117, I think it was 117.5. What does that mean? 117.5. Well, when I finished The 7 Tenets of Spiritism, it was my 5th book, and it had 117 pages. Because you never know how many pages until you format the book at the end, right? And I sent it, and it had 117 pages of my 5th book. So they told me that in my dream. And that was like 2 months later when that came out. So that's why you write these things down, and then you can start seeing patterns. maybe you never find a pattern for some dreams. I mean, there's still some dreams I still don't know what's going on, but other ones you start to figure out. So dreams do have meaning, not all of them. Some are just a perturbation of leaving and entering your body, which causes strange things to happen. But I would write them down and I would concentrate to think where you went on the emotion you felt when you woke up. Did you feel good? Then you probably went to a higher place. Did you feel kind of nervous? You went to a lower place. Okay, next question. What does it mean spiritually when someone says they're innocent? Uh, I'm not quite sure what that means. So does it say that someone's spiritually innocent, meaning they haven't explored that and they haven't explored spirituality, or what does it mean when they say they're innocent and they're really guilty? That is that's their reaction has a reaction. There might be a price to pay. That when they deny something that's true, if it's little, it's probably no big deal. But if it's a major thing, then it will have karma. Karma's real. For every action, there's a reaction. That's why when spiritists see a criminal and a victim, they'll actually say, okay, well, at least that victim got that trial over with, and they'll feel more sorry for the criminal because the criminal, they'll pay for that. When someone does something wrong for you, don't you worry about you getting revenge or trying to teach that person a lesson. That person will be taught a lesson. I guarantee it. So when you look at these corrupt politicians taking money from us and forcing us to do things we don't want to do, you just think, well, I don't want to be in your shoes in later life. God bless you. I've done things wrong. I mean, so I don't judge them because I've been told I've been corrupt. I've been unfair. I've been horrible. And therefore, I don't judge them. I just think, well, you're going to go through some hard trials. Is our soul another word for paraspirit or spirit? So Spiritism, now some people say a soul and spirit are different. Spiritism uses spirit and soul interchangeably, and that's we really use that for the spirit part, the encapsulation of your personality. That's what we use that for. Why is society becoming increasingly narcissistic and toxic? Well, I understand that, but I think society is. It depends on the advancement of society. There was, and I don't have it on my fingertips, but there was this, and I actually did a blog about this a while ago on my Substack of St. Augustine writing about Rome, there, and this was like around 200 AD or whatever, of how society, all he wanted was for people not to, as for the rich to be looked up by the poor and do whatever they said, and if anyone pointed out what they did wrong, then they should be punished because whatever they wanted to do, they could do without any moral repercussions or anything. And I go, that sounded just like our culture now, right? We should do anything we want with no repercussions, and even if anyone calls us upon it, we need to cancel them. So this, I believe, is a natural tendency of societies that have too much wealth and power, and they become more involved in their own materialism. And in fact, that's what spirits say. The big battle that's going on now is between materialism and spirituality. And society becoming increasingly narcissistic and toxic is part of that complete focus on materialism. It's because you want, and when I say materialism, it's not just cars and houses. It's I want pleasure. I want the things I want. Right. I don't want to think of my higher self. I want to think of just my immediate gratification, and that is a natural evolution of society for that pendulum to swing that way, and it's done that probably in different Chinese wealthy regimes, right? Roman and in advanced societies where they become hedonistic. And hopefully what happens is that, like you're looking at this and you're going, well, that's not the way to be. So that you can learn not to be that way. Now, those people who are narcissistic and toxic, they will learn their own things. But you're there, you're observing, and you're going, that is not the path. That's not the correct path. So it's all about us learning that. So it's like people who grew up in communist nations, and they look at that and they go, "Oh, I never want to live in this, intense communist where we have this ruling class that think they know everything." In fact, it's funny because they're polling people who used to live in communist countries. Say, what's the worst thing of living in a communist country? They said, well, it's the complete incompetence of the rulers, and we couldn't say anything about how incompetent they were. It's like working in a big corporation in, let's say, in any of the Western democracies, and these people will tell you these just idiot things. And like I was imagining, they tell you, oh, we've got to do this. And you're thinking like, oh my heavens, how do you get in the door in the morning? And of course, in communists and fascist nations, it's like, well, everybody has to do this stupid thing. And so hopefully people learn that they don't want that anymore. And that's why the spirit world let a large part of our world become under these repressive regimes. And like in the United States now, they're trying to do this again. And hopefully people will push back, go, nah, I'm sorry. You're not the benign people you think. You're going to turn into a cruel ruling class. It always happens because we're all imperfect here on Earth, right? If we were all perfect on Earth, I wouldn't care what the form of government was because everybody would be nice and they'd all want to help you. That's not the way it is now. All forms of governments have their problems. There's no perfect form of government because there's no perfect people. So anyway, so this pendulum will swing back. The spirit world has said we're going to be a planet of regeneration. Things will happen, and I think things in the near future dramatically will occur, which will swing that pendulum back to spirituality and shock those people. I don't know how long, but this will happen because if we're destined to become a planet of regeneration within the middle of the 21st century, something has to happen to swing that pendulum back. Another question. We can't even comprehend what heaven is like from an earthly perspective, let alone the higher realms. Exactly. Now, but this is where the spirit world with Alan Kardec and helps us gets an inkling of what to expect. And that's why on my book, Heaven and Below, where I describe heaven and I give instances in heaven, what happens in different parts of heaven, you can start to be prepared for when you go over. You can start to be prepared for the different levels of heaven. And this is where communications from spirits and from spiritist mediums are starting to prepare you to understand why you want to be in heaven, how wonderful heaven is, and why you want to expend the effort to improve yourself spiritually. It's worth the effort. And as they've said in the New Testament and in spiritist literature, whatever you sacrifice in this life, you'll be 100-fold rewarded in the spirit life in order to increase your spirituality, your niceness, your fraternity, your charity, and love. And this book I'm going over on Tuesdays, Through the Mist, where this very religious person goes, I can't believe heaven's like this. I was never told this, right? Yeah, I think he was, I can't remember what he was, a Lutheran or something like that. He goes, I was never told this heaven would be like this. So I would say read some of the spiritist literature and you will find out. And there's a lot of it we're talking about what Jiva Allen's mother did in heaven. There's other spirits of what they did, like in No Solar, what they learn in heaven, what they do in heaven, what work they do. There's a lot more information that given to us by spiritist mediums in the spirit world. But you're right, our comprehension isn't, and especially in the past, is very, very fuzzy. That's why I love Spiritism. It starts giving us concrete things. And Spiritism isn't the one where we're saying, oh, if you don't believe in Spiritism, you're going to rot in hell forever. No. Spiritism just lays this information on the table. Okay, here's the information. If you want to pick it up and read it, it may help you feel better about your life, feel better about the chaotic things that happen, to explain these things and prepare yourself and and let you be self-motivated of what you want to do, because this is just one life in your immortal existence. And if you ignore it, fine, you'll learn another life. No big deal. You're just losing a little bit of time. But again, you're immortal. You got lots of time. Okay, another question. Why would people say they have visions of themselves in fire and brimstone types of hell? Why would Christianity say that hell is like this? Is Christian hell real or nothing like what the Bible says? Well, there are areas, and you can read in when spirits mediums and when spirits have been in and given their own, and not just spiritist literature, other literature where they've given their own stories of being in these lower places, where there is horrible places in hell, where there is, I won't say fire and brimstone, but there are people torturing other people. There are people just horrible situations. And that is because you go where you need to go. So if you're a criminal and you're cruel, let's say you're the Emperor Nero, or you are Stalin or Mao, who've killed millions of people, you go where there's others like you. And they just use people, right? They didn't care. They'll go where they're used. This is the function of these dark abyss. You're not ever put into hell permanently for eternity. No, you're put in there until you decide. You're put in there by the law of affinity to be with people like you until you decide, like, oh, I don't like being with people like me. They're cruel and mean. I should be the main cruel and person. Then you finally find out that there's always someone more dominant and worse than you are. And then they start changing their attitude. So hell is bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I'm not going to say there's no such thing out there. Of course, it's not permanent, right? But it's bad. In fact, you might want to read. See, what's the book? I go through it in my first book, Heaven and Below, and I talk about hell. I would read this book and really see, because you don't want to be there. And I talk about heaven below. I talk about heaven, Jesus Christ, and then I talk about the lower zone and the dark abyss. So it'll give you some real. Paul and Alberts is the one that's talked about. This doctor went down into this zone and just was tortured and just really cruelty. And then finally said, "Oh, I don't want to be like this." And he finally rose up to the lower levels of in the lower zone and getting ready to go higher and higher into heaven. So yeah, it's not nice. So I'm not going to say it's nothing like what the Bible says. It's fire and brimstone is a kind of a easy way of saying it's horrible. I'm not going to say there's fire and brimstone. It's like you're in pain. It's not a nice place. People adapt to it, right? There are cities in hell. There's organizations. There's gangs. There's wars. But it's not a nice place. But fire and brimstone is kind of a descriptive part of the emotional problems within hell. So yeah. So don't go there. Okay. Another question is, hello, congratulations on your channel. Your videos are excellent. What happens to the baby spirit when a pregnant woman dies while pregnant? Is her child born of ordinary birth in the spirit world? And the answer is yes. This happens even to any abortions, natural abortions, right? When the baby dies, right? Which is probably what you're talking about. And so that will happen. In fact, there is a lot of information on this. I won't say a lot, but a lot of information. So let me cover it. So what happens is, for babies that die in the womb somehow, either through artificial or natural miscarriage, they will still be raised in the spirit world. And they actually will try and have their mother as part of that. They'll come and they'll be with them in the spirit world, and they'll try and have their mother. Sometimes their mother doesn't want, or just a cruel mother, they'll just raise them by themselves. There is a difference, they say, between a baby that dies in the womb versus a baby that just, for seconds or whatever, minutes, hours, that lives in the physical earth. Because just that baby taking their breath in the physical earth will give them, their paraspirit, a different ability and a different aspect of them when they go back to the spirit world. Now, what some spirits have said is those babies that were never got to be in the physical world, they're very loving and they're wonderful, wonderful children, and they're raised in the spirit world. Now, but they will be given other functions later in their life than spirits who die, like us, or like a baby that's been in the physical world. Now, why that is, I don't know, but that's what I read. It's very interesting. There's just there's so much stuff to do in the spirit world. Who knows? But they will be given a different type of path. Now, I'm not absolutely certain of what that path is, or is this all the time, or there's exceptions? I don't know. Now, the other thing you can say, okay, well, if you're immortal and you've been living time after time again, and you die as a child, why don't you just revert back to a full-grown adult spirit? Right? That makes sense. The answer is some do. Some do, just like adults, right? You die adult, you're still an adult. But some children, when they die, stay as children and they're raised, even though they've lived previous lives. Now, this is just my idea, and please correct me if you think I'm wrong or you've heard anything else. My idea is that your previous lives have been non-productive and failures, and your personality has just gone off on a bad track. And that just like on your laptop, when you get that blue screen of death in Microsoft, right? They're going to reboot you and then say, okay, now we got to restart this guy, and raise them with love in the spirit world, and give that spirit an ability to restart and reseed their personality and their character. That's just my thought. So I'm not going to say I know what I'm talking about. Okay. Next question. Why are there different races? Why would God create different races? How did God come up with the body colors? Why did God not make orange or green colored races? Is the Babylon Bible story real? Not okay. I don't know what you mean by the Babylon Bible story, but races were created in response to environmental factors, and there are probably orange and green people on other planets, and blue people, and different type of human-like people on other planets to conform to the environment of how that planet, the state of that planet. So on Earth was the size of the Earth, the gravity, the combination of oxygen, and so forth and so forth. You have a type of race, and you have different races in different latitudes that will evolve into different colors. Colors, it means nothing. Races, I always say that races are like, if you ever go to Disneyland, you go to Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, for instance, and you go on this ride and you get these different old cars, right? And you get, there's a pink car, and there's a blue car, and there's an orange car. You just pick a car and you ride that car for a while in this exciting ride, and you get off the car. But that's our life on Earth. Your spirit. And when you go back into the spirit world, you can retain whatever color you want or change your color. I've heard descriptions of people with like this beautiful amber or this blue color, because that's what they liked when the planet they were on before they came to Earth. They like that color. You can be anything you want. Now, what I've read in the future will all have a tendency to go to the same race, I think. I read that. So, but as they raise, because in the spirit world has said, don't get tied to whatever race, culture, nation you are. That's all going to disappear. This is all just temporary. There's probably right now there's different races and cultures and nations because they want us to go through different learning experiences, and they want the range of classrooms to be wide so they can put us in whatever situations they want to give us the stimuli necessary to transform our character for the better. And the oranges, the colors are just depending on with the environmental factors of whatever planet you live on. You go to another planet, you might be different, something else. Okay, have you ever read the series Life in the Spiritual Boundary, Louise? Yes, I've read every book in that series, which begins with the book Our Home, No Solar. In fact, you'll see it right there, No Solar. And I've read it multiple times, and I write a lot about it, and I use quotes from it in my books to back up what I've read and to explain more um, of what is meant. So let's say in my series of 3 books, Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and How We're Guided by Spirits, I will take something done, let's say by the Reverend G. Vowell, and a spirit talking to him, and I'd say, okay, this is what they said. Now, here's what another spirit told Andre Luis that shows you the same thing with a little bit different point of view. And that's really what I do in my spirits, like explore in my books. I mean, explore your destiny, the case for reincarnation. I'll say, this is what Spiritism tells us, and here's the information backing up that in the different books. And I used a lot of books by Chico Xavier. Of course, Chico Xavier did 450 books, and then actually it's over 500 since he died. They kept now. Not all of those are in English. Some of those I take that have been in Portuguese. I'll take parts of it out, but mostly I'll just quote from books in English. So yes, I would recommend everyone, if you go to my blog, nwspiritism.com, look up Andre Louis' series of books, I think. I have them numbered. I think there's 13. You can correct me on that. So read them in order. I don't know why FEB, they do in Portuguese. You go to a Spiritist bookstore, they'll put them in order, right? But you got to figure it out for yourself. I had to figure out by looking at the copy at the publishing date. But I have them written in order for you. So yeah, so read those. Those are wonderful, wonderful. Next question. What would be done with a spirit who loves physically fighting a little bit, doing sexual acts, getting high and having fun, being wild a bit, but also is kind, empathetic, compassionate, loving, and caring? Well, that spirit will learn to de-emphasize the primitive emotions. So this is a perfect question. This is us being in the middle of why we're here on earth, right? We're not all angels. We still have our primitive emotions, like we become aggressive. We like the acts, right? Get drunk or whatever, to lose yourself into incorporate and get excited with those primitive emotions. But then you also have this balance of you're learning, you're becoming empathetic, you're becoming compassionate, loving, and caring, as you said. And so you will go. So what will be done? What will be done with that spirit? They will go through life after life, essentially tearing out one primitive emotion after another and replacing them with advanced civilized emotion. So that's a description of someone just on the trajectory of becoming a mature spirit, a civilized spirit. They're not there yet. Everyone has good and not so good in them. There's no perfect goodness or perfect badness, and so everyone's a mixture. And you're just on that trajectory. Your next life, okay, you'll get rid of something, or maybe 2 things, right? You'll get rid of, I don't want to physically fight anymore, and I'm not going to do any types of drugs anymore because I'm done with that. In fact, interesting. My wife and we've never been interested in drinking. I think I've been in somewhat drunk one time after I played tennis. Oh no, I'm sorry, handball. And then I drank some afterwards because I was so needing water. But my wife, neither of us ever wanted drugs or alcohol or anything like that. And I believe that's because our instinct and our conscience, we've learned from previous lives, we probably have been addicts and alcoholics, and we go, not going there. Some people just say, no, not doing that, right? So eventually you'll learn not to do that. Next question is, oh, your presentations are so relevant to our lives. Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. That's what I hope. I hope to help to do this for people. Kevin Campbell. Hi, Brian. I'm really enjoying Heaven Below right now. Question: where can I find information about addiction and the way it is treated at Spiritist centers in Brazil specifically? Oh, the name went out of my mind. Go to my blog and look up Spiritist hospitals, and you should find an article. And I forgot the lady's name, and she's a lady that's been and visited them. I wrote an article about this, and try to find her. And also, if you'd like, go to my blog, nwspiritism.com, go to the About Me section, send me your email, and then I will do some research and see if I can find some names of Spiritist centers, and maybe they have someone that speaks English if you want to call them. In addiction right now, and they have a, what I've read, this is old, this is probably years old, but they have a very good success rate, and they treat addiction by a normal way they do in the United States, psychoanalysis and maybe some drugs, but they also will have mediums meetings, seeing what type of spirits maybe are encouraging these addictions, right, to destroy this person. So yeah, do that. There's the Dim family watching from Germany. Oh, how exciting! Thank you. Okay, then here's another question. Spiritism teaches the plurality of inhabited worlds and that we are not alone in the universe. Do you believe that aliens that visit us are spirits from other planets that materialize on Earth? Now, I believe there are aliens, and I believe they've come to Earth. And in fact, Chico has said that they will come and they will expose themselves. They've been here before, and I've seen some people in government know they've been here. They will expose themselves in the near future. Now, how they get here? I believe they get here in ships that go faster than light. But can they just materialize? And they can probably, some of them can send us information via mental and be here. I don't know if they can materialize, but who knows? They probably could. So yes, I do believe that aliens are spirits. They understand the spirit world. That doesn't mean they're all great people. I mean, even Chico said that some of these tall aliens aren't the nicest people in the world, but they do understand that Jesus Christ is in charge of this planet, and Jesus Christ said, "Nope, you're not going to bother these people. I put in an embargo, right? You can only do so much." They understand that. That I'm sure of. They understand the power of the spirit world. They know that they are subservient to that. Now, do they all are full of loving? That I would say watch them carefully. Some are, and some maybe not so much. Okay, I'll do the last question because I'm 20 minutes over practically. What would happen spiritually to an active, healthy, and fit person that would cause them to become morbidly obese and sedentary after years? Well, I believe that would weaken, just as we were talking about at the first part of our talk here, about the paraspirit and the crown centers, also, and the force centers, also corresponding to chakras, that their harmony and vibration of their chakras would become out of balance, and they would have different diseases and difficulties eventually if they do not try and harmonize and try and take care of their body. It's like you're in school and they give you a book and they say, take care of this book, don't ruin this book, right? We're expected to take care of our bodies. Now, like me, I'm older. Well, I have to work hard. I'm gaining weight. I don't want to gain. It's tough not gaining weight. Um, but it's something we have to do. We have to take care of our body. That's why the spirit world doesn't want us to be addicted and all that other thing, is that, we owe it to take care of ourselves and to live as long as possible. And because if that person became morbidly obese and sedentary and they died early, same thing happened. If you read the book Mille Solar, Henri Louis was called an unconscious suicide. He goes, I'm not a suicide. I didn't kill myself. And finally found out that was, yeah, you did. You drank to excess. You had syphilis. You died of these things. And therefore, they call you an unconscious suicide, meaning you died before your allotted time because you did not take care of your body. The same thing would happen to that person. They did not take care of their body, and therefore they died before their time. What does that mean? That means if you're, let's say you're 60 and you should have lived to 65, just like Henri Louis. I'm not saying the ages, but I'm just saying as an example. He spent a number of years in the lower zone and not a pleasant place, because now this is always exceptions. I'm not saying there's always exceptions to this. But he had to spend time in the lower zone because he died before his planned time. That's frowned upon. Now, I know there's exceptions. There's the exceptions where this woman committed suicide because a very cruel husband, like beat her and took her child and threw it in the river and drowned, and she committed suicide. Well, the spirit world just brought her right back up, and loved her, because that was horrible, just horrible what happened to her. So there's always exceptions. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for being part of our meeting today. And remember, we have live streams Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Of course, and I love Mondays because there's questions. So, and send me more questions if you're interested. And also, if you are interested in Spiritism, which I know you probably are if you're here, I recommend my book, The Spirit Realm, Spiritism Revealed, the Reality of Our Existence. And I go through the spirit universe, the physical universe, spirits, why you're here. I kind of try to bring everything in there and make it kind of one summary. And I go deeper in my other